Good morning. On behalf of my director, James Ferguson, who is in Atlanta with students in Atlanta launching Black Youth Vote from Atlanta, I bring you greetings. We're going to change the program a bit from what you were looking at and bring up Mrs. Cora Masters Berry, who is the First Lady of Washington, D.C. She is going to do something at the beginning of this to deal with a tragedy that we have had in our community on yesterday on the passing of Ronald Brown. And I'll bring Ms. Cora Berry. Then we'll go back to the program.
Good morning. This is a particularly bittersweet morning for us. I think it was very appropriate that Melanie spoke about Ron Brown as a member of our community, and I understand that there are people watching from all over the country, so we want to stop for a moment of silence to acknowledge his presence and power of God to ease the pain and to bring forth a reason for everything. But we also want to state that he was indeed a member of our community. He was the chairman of the UDC Board of Trustees. He did a lot of things in our community. He never left Washington, D.C. So we sort of see him as a local resident who had a national position. So it was particularly painful, not only because of his good works on a national level, but we lost a resident, we lost a neighbor, we lost a good friend who played basketball on the corner, and someone who challenged my husband regularly in tennis. We will not discuss how that usually turned out. But in deference to his passing and in memory of him and in prayer for his family, his friends, his colleagues, and also the other people who were on that plane. Everyone who was on that plane was very, very important. No one was more important than the other. A human life is a human life. So we have a moment of silence in his passing, the passing of the other people on the plane, and prayer for the families to get through this. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to go forward with the program, with introductions. We have Mr. Ron Moulton with Ceasefire, Don't Smoke the Brothers. We have Mr. Tim, help me out, Felicia. Tim Jones. Felicia, you get up here and do this because I'm having one of my moments. Yeah.
We have Ron Moulton, we have Leslie Watson Davis, we have with us also Lisa Sullivan's not
and
with
will
us
come
yet.
Up. Yes, she is. And then you need
Lisa
to come
Sullivan
up.
is coming in. I can't see through the lights. Donna Frisbee with Rock the Vote Hip Hop Coalition, and also we have Desaidra Lomax. Desaidra.
With Front Lash.
With Front Lash.
And also Mr. Harold Hunter with the local organizing committee, who's the voter registration chair. And these are some of the members. And of course, Mr. Dennis Rogers, who is the Black Youth Vote Coordinator Extraordinaire. And these are some of the representatives of the Black Youth Vote Coalition who will be driving this movement. At this time, I would like to bring on the chairman of the National Coalition on Black Voter Participation, Mr. Richard Womack.
Let me say good morning to all of you, and I also want to express, as Mrs. Cora Masters Berry did just before me prior to this, and also to talk about the former mayor of Cleveland, Carl Stokes, who we lost not too long ago. It has been a really tragic moment for many of us, particularly in terms of the field of civil rights, human rights, and in terms of achievement in this country, in terms of the people who have left a legacy for us, a legacy that our young folks must pick up and carry on. And I hope this will be an inspiring moment to them, that they must step forward and take their place in history. Our black youth, I believe, are excited today. They're excited at the prospects that they can make a difference into the political arena. And I believe that they are motivated to stand forward, to participate in the upcoming elections, and I think that their voices will be heard. They know that this is a challenge for them because they know that many of us have said they will not participate. And they want to challenge us and prove us wrong, that this is a time for them to speak up and to be heard, and for them to make a difference and carry on that legacy we have talked about for so many years. I see our black youth who are being energized, moving forward, they're motivated, and they will now look at the ballot box instead of the bullet. This is their slogan now, black youth must vote. Black youth will vote, and they will participate. I am proud of the black youth today because I know that they stand ready, willing, and able to take their place in history. We're looking forward to our black youth, and this is one of the reasons we're here today, because we know that Dr. Martin Luther King did not die in vain. All those other people who fought for the right to vote know that today, if we challenge the system, that if we motivate our young folks, that if we give them encouragement, that's what we're trying to do today. We want to step back and tell them to step forward. Step forward and make a difference in this country because their lives, their livelihoods, and the future generations at stake. Let me say that, in closing, I believe that Black Youth Vote is building an intergenerational ties between the labor movement, between the church, civil rights groups, and community-based organizations. And I believe they can also build ties with the various political parties. This is a nonpartisan effort in terms of our black youth, that what we are saying to them, regardless what party it is, whatever your philosophy of thinking is, at least participate, get involved, make that difference. That is a challenge, and I think that is a tribute that Dr. Martin Luther King would say to us today. Get involved, make a difference. Thank you very much.
At this time, we bring up Mrs. Cora Berry again, but before I do, I just want to make sure that I point out two very important things about Mrs. Berry as it relates to what we're doing here today. One is that Mrs. Berry was in October 16th, and leading up to that day that we all know this infamous now, the Million Man March, was the national chairperson for the voter registration drive for the Million Man March, where over 150,000 African Americans were registered to vote. She also, back in, I'm new to this place, but what year was that? 1994, okay, I'm 6 months new to this place, mobilized Washington, D.C. in an extraordinary way. I'm not going to take the thunder from that because I hope she'll share some of that, and that is in the mobilization of her husband, our Mayor Marion Berry, in an extraordinary effort of mobilizing the vote that we hope that she will be able to share, and she already has in some of the trainings that we've done with young people, in giving them those tools that they can utilize to get the black youth vote out 1996 and beyond. And at this time, I bring on Mrs. Cora Masters Berry.
Thank you. I won't take much of your time. It was in 1994 that my husband ran for re-election for a fourth term as mayor. And one of the issues that was very important to us was there were so many of our people in the city who were basically disenfranchised. So we took upon ourselves to launch a voter registration drive that has been very much heralded as a success for two major reasons. One, we were able to register almost 20,000 new voters and get them to the polls to vote, but we're also able to register at least 50% of that 20,000 were young people. First-time voters, 18 years old, 18 to 25. Many of them had never registered before and never voted. But the most important element of that was the people who were registering them were young people. And I strongly believe that young people are better registrars of young people than anyone else. So it was the young people who went into the go-go clubs and registered people. It was the young people who went into the shopping centers and went and got them. It was the young people who sat out front of every high school graduation that year and registered voters when they came out. Either they were 18 or were going to be 18 in time to vote. It was a tremendous movement. And as Mr. Womack said, he said that we should move back and let the young people go ahead, and I'm saying that we don't have to move back. They're running right over us. This is not the beginning. They're just announcing what they are already in the process of doing. And I am by profession a political science professor and have been at our university for 20 years. And I came right at the end of the 60s, and then I stayed there through the 70s and the 80s, and the students were sort of like very lethargic. And boy, when the 90s kicked in, all of a sudden I saw a resurgence of the mindset, the attitude, the spirit of the young people of the 60s, of which I was sort of like one. I don't know how young I was, but so these young people, I am so proud of them. I was in a training session in Atlanta, and I just couldn't, my husband said, well, how did it go? And I said, oh, but these young people, they were like you were and we were. I mean, these young people, they are so serious. So I expect them to continue to do what they do, that whatever help I can assist them with. When we did the Million Man March, I'll say again, Mr. Harold Hunter and a lot of young people his age were the ones who were actually the what? The registrars. They were the ones who were out on that mall. They're the ones who were putting the packets together. They were the ones who were making the phone calls. They are the facilitators of this whole process. Maybe because of our age and our experience, we can give them direction, we can help them, we can counsel them, and we can teach them. But they have the spirit, they have the knowledge, they have the commitment, and they really are the ones who are going to get the job done. And if we can get our young people pumped up, not about just registering, but by voting, then we can change the complexion of this nation overnight politically. We have a lot of things we won't have to worry about, because these young people are not just coming here to register voters, but they're coming here to make a difference in what goes on in this country. So I say to you, congratulations on what you're already doing, and my husband and I stand ready to assist you in any way, and I work consistently with Melanie and James Ferguson, so I'm just as near as a phone call. She called me this morning very sad and said, you're probably not coming, because my husband and I canceled our whole schedule yesterday to be there for the Brown family. And I said, oh, no question, I'm on my way now, because this is what Ron stood for, the empowerment of his people. He would want us to go on and get the job done. So I say to you, young people, just get the job done.
Thank you. Next, it's my pleasure to bring to you the National Field Coordinator for Black Youth Vote, a young man by the name of Dennis B. Rogers. And Dennis has a history of working with the National African American Student Association, and he is also one of the youth organizers from the Million Man March. Dennis?
Thank you very much. I did make a pretty short list of some things I wanted to cover with you, but I think you'll agree by taking a look at the people standing with me that this is certainly an intergenerational piece. This is something that we must do together. The name says Black Youth Vote. If you're out there and you know one youth, you yourself are a youth, you have to be involved in this political year. Now, how and what is Black Youth Vote? Who is Black Youth Vote targeted toward? Where, when, and why this year, at this time in history, is there such a thing as Black Youth Vote? What is it? Black Youth Vote is truly a sweeping change in America. Similar to when hip-hop music was introduced several years ago and everyone's like, what's that noise? I can't deal with that. That's what we're talking about when we say Black Youth Vote. We're talking about from the minds and the voices of young people, a two-way conversation with adults, a two-way conversation with decision makers here in America. A lot of people want young people to register to vote. They want young people to get out to vote. But what happens after we mobilize and we put the check the day of the election? What happens to the accountability factor with those that we put into office? Here in Washington, D.C., I think it goes without saying that Marion Barry and Cora Masters Barry are accountable to the people of Washington, D.C. And that's why there's an overwhelming amount of support for them. That's a model. When we talk about voter education, registration, mobilization, and accountability, that's what we mean when we say Black Youth Vote. The acronym is VERMA, V-E-R-M-A. In unison as never before, combined strength of what some people call young Black America is being focused. in unison as never before. The combined strength of what some people call the Black Generation X is being focused. In unison as never before, what some people call urban youth, that energy is being focused. More so than the energy, the strength, the intellect, the creativity, it's that black youth are focusing their energy on truly changing America this year by being involved in the political process. I know a lot of armchair revolutionaries that don't even believe in voting. They're like, man, look, I don't want to deal with that bump voting. And I'm talking to the youth, bump voting. And you know people that think the same way. What we have to be able to illustrate to them is that voting is a tool like a hammer. Being an armchair revolutionary, picking up a book, being able to kick the lyrics and the rhetoric, that is a tool. But what we have to do is to be intelligent enough to use the proper tool at the proper time. Who's involved in Black Youth Vote? Members of the hip-hop community, the quote-unquote gang youth, high school students, church youth, college students on historically black colleges and universities, as well as on predominantly white institutions in America. Incarcerated youth, youth of public housing is involved in Black Youth Vote. Youth organizers, youth professionals, and professionals to be. That energy is being focused. How is Black Youth Vote taking place? What's happening? Some of the people that have come up behind me will give you more energy and feedback on that, but I just want to say that Black youth voters are defining their issues. They are pooling their resources. They are, I have to read this, right? They are communicating among themselves in a language that they understand so that they can articulate their needs to the adult generation, to the elected officials. Where is Black Youth Vote taking place? In every city, every hamlet, on every university campus here in America. We're talking about a sweeping change. Why is it happening this year? We started out with a word of silence on behalf of Mr. Ron Brown. And for a lot of young people looking at the administration, for a lot of young people looking at that milieu of black leaders, quote unquote, they're looking at the different styles that are being used by different people to be effective in different situations. And they see Mr. Ron Brown as an example of a style that can be used effectively to make a sweeping change here in America. Why? Is it because, baby, in the year 2007, our rights as black voters may be repealed? Why? Is it because redistricting is taking place and some of those seats of representatives that represent our voices in our community are really being just pushed out? Why is Black Youth Vote taking place in this day and age? Maybe it's the energy behind the Million Man March. Maybe it's a God-given mission. What we do know is this, though. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt that on the ground level in cities across this nation, black youth are mobilizing to make a difference this year with Black Youth Vote through voter education, registration, mobilization, and accountability. And that's the key. That's the difference this year. We're talking accountability, both on November, January 1st, 1997, and beyond. Thank you very much.
Next, we'll have a few words from Ron Moten, who's a spokesperson for Ceasefire, Don't Smoke the Brothers.
Greetings. I'd like to first of all greet you in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. I'm proud to be in the city, Washington, D.C., where we have the Honorable Mayor Marion Barry, who backs the youth, who pushes the youth out in the communities, brothers from the streets, brothers from the high schools, the colleges, and let them know that they can be effective. Let them know that they can make a difference. Whereas though a lot of people try to keep the youth down, in Washington, D.C., we have a mayor who is backing us and pushing us 100 miles per hour. I've studied the things the mayor has done. I've studied the things that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan has taught us. I've studied the things that my father, Al Malik Farrakhan, has taught us. And what they have done is waking the youth up and let them know that they are the ones that are going to have to stand up to the Fourth Amendment that's been taken away, where they can just do anything to us as black people. We standing up to a government that believes that jails are more important than jobs. The jails are more important than sending a brother to college. That our brothers, our people are being enslaved in the federal prisons for these crack sentences that Bill Clinton signed off on and let it be active. He spoke out against it. Then him and Janet Reno violated us as black people, took our vote and threw it in the trash. They keep on making promises to us. We are no longer, as youth, going to stand for it. We are going to organize. We're going to mobilize, and we're going to make a difference. Me, being an ex-gang member, I realized, like Honorable Louis Farrakhan taught me, that the gun is not going to do it. We have to organize, mobilize as voters, as people, and recognize the necessity for unity and group operation. Then we can be effective. I say to the brother Ron Brown, your spirit is still with us, and it will live on. And you've motivated me to do something. You motivated us to do something as a people. We stand behind you. We love you, brother, and we thank you for all the things you've done for us. We thank you for the foundation that you had, where you went back to the communities where you came from and gave back, like a lot of our politicians, they don't do. Like a lot of our brothers, like Michael Jordan, who's being a prostitute, as far as I'm concerned, not doing nothing for the black people. We're not asking you for your money, Michael Jordan. We ask you to come back to the people who look up to you and make a difference and teach them. That's all we ask for people like you to do. And we're saying we're going to start making you people accountable, you athletes, you people in government accountable, and we know the youth can make the difference. It's no longer going to be a thing where our brothers and sisters are going to be incarcerated. We want our brothers and sisters educated like everybody else kids are educated. We don't want our brothers on the street. The brothers will come off the street if we give them alternatives to selling drugs and violence. But as long as these things are neglected, our people will keep on being enslaved in these prisons. Our youth will keep on being left out of the whole picture in the world. And our leaders will keep on being chosen by people that are not amongst us. And I say one other person I want to address. Brother Larry King, not brother, Mr. Larry King. We coming at you too. We coming at your seat. We getting you up out of there. Peace.
Next, we have Leslie Watson Davis, Public Policy Director with Citizenship Education Fund.
Good morning and thank you. I just want to briefly say how proud the Citizenship Education Fund, which is a nonpartisan organization, is to be a part of Black Youth Vote. We have been planning since last year for this year. We have been planning how we were going to be effective. We have been planning how we were going to utilize the resources that we have available for us. We have been planning to have a successful 1996 to turn out the Black Youth Vote so that we won't repeat 1992 in terms of the numbers, so that we won't repeat 1994. We will be visible in 96. We will be vocal, and we will be voting in 1996. This is a movement that people need to be aware of. You will be seeing the t-shirts, you will be seeing the buttons, and this is not a fashion statement. This is not a trend. This is the beginning of something, and some people are going to be scared, and you have a right to be. We are going to be out here answering the question that is constantly being asked when young people say, why? Why should I care? Why should I be involved? You should, then we are going to answer them by saying that their vote is their voice. They must be a part of the political process. They must be electing those policymakers that are making decisions on budgets that are affecting their daily lives. They must understand Medicaid and how their grandmother or grandfather will have to pay a higher co-payment. They must understand that welfare reform does affect them. They must understand that affirmative action has something to do with their future, not right now. It may have later on. They must understand that education is an issue for them or for their children, redistricting, and many, many other things. So this is not going to be a quiet storm that is going to sweep in 1996. Black Youth Vote will be loud. It will be very loud. And again, the Citizenship Education Fund is very proud to be a member of this dynamic and very, very visible and political coalition. Thank you.
Those three speakers brought you up to speed on Black Youth Vote's mobilization for 1996 and beyond. Now we move into the area of coalition building, and I'm very pleased to introduce Lisa Sullivan, who's acting director with the Children's Defense Fund's Black Student Leadership Network.
Thank you very much, Felicia. Good morning. On behalf of the National Coordinating Committee, staff, and local affiliates of the Black Student Leadership Network, I am pleased to join the National Coalition on Black Voter Participation in the launching of the Black Youth Vote Coalition to mobilize, educate, train, and empower African American youth and young adults in 1996 and beyond to choose the ballot, not the bullet. The formation of this coalition is historic because it signals the beginning of strategic planning and movement building on the part of young black activists to empower ourselves by transforming the political landscape and political debate in America. For too long, black youth have been pushed to the margins of American society, alienated by the political process and its public policy debates. For far too many public officials, it has been in their self-interest to deliberately leave young African Americans out of the mainstream electoral process. In fact, lately, black youth have become convenient targets for elected officials of all persuasions. In an era where the U.S. Congress has proposed budget cuts that would, 1, slash federal employment and job training assistance programs, 2, completely eliminate the federal summer jobs programs for youth, 3, slash federal educational assistance funds for disadvantaged school districts, and 4, significantly reduce federal assistance to college students, the Black Youth Vote Coalition will fill an important void in the civic engagement of an entire generation of young African Americans. In an era where the constitutional rights of black youth and young adults are being randomly violated in police sweeps, curfews, and other forms of police misconduct, Black Youth Vote will provide much-needed forums for young African Americans to identify the key issues that affect their positive growth and development. In an era where being young, black, poor, and a resident of public housing means that you have only one strike before you're off to prison, Black Youth Vote will serve as a much-needed vehicle for the political education and mobilization of a generation of young African Americans who are being deliberately targeted for incarceration in America's new economic growth sector, the prison industrial complex. And in an era where each day 172 black young people under age 18 are arrested for violent crimes, and when homicide is the leading cause of death for black youth 15 to 24 years old, the Black Youth Vote Coalition represents a bold call from within the hip-hop generation to stop the violence and choose the ballot, not the bullet, in the resolution of the problems confronting black America. Today, across the nation, young African American activists will convene on college campuses and local churches and at other community institutions to commemorate the 26th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by launching their local Black Youth Vote voter empowerment campaigns. Determined to transform the social, economic, and political conditions in local communities, Black Youth Vote has the potential to redefine American politics and public policy into the 21st century. The goal of this coalition is simple. We intend to ensure that Black Youth vote in 1996 and beyond. Thank you.
Black Youth Vote is pleased to announce its emerging relationship with the new Hip Hop Coalition. And I will bring Donna Frisbee, the Development Director for Rock the Vote and the Hip Hop Coalition, to bring you those words.
Good morning. We're really pleased, the Hip Hop Coalition, which is a program of Rock the Vote, is very pleased to be a part of Black Youth Vote in 1996 and beyond. When I joined Rock the Vote, for those of you who may be familiar with Rock the Vote, it was an organization founded in 1990 by members of the entertainment industry to focus on getting young people to get involved in politics and use entertainers and public service announcements on MTV and BET to tell young people to vote. In 1992, Rock the Vote, along with a number of organizations across the country, was very instrumental in getting more than 2 million new young voters to the polls. Well, most of those new young voters were white college students. And in 1996, in the formation of the Hip Hop Coalition, I am bringing together hip hop artists and entertainment executives to involve those people in doing the public service announcements and doing the radio and audio public service announcements, formulating partnerships with the top 50 urban radio stations across the country. We've already got about 10 radio stations signed on to begin running our urban public service announcements across the country. And BET and MTV have committed to running our television public service announcements. We've shot public service announcements to date with Coolio, Chuck D, LL Cool J, Method Man, Kadeem Hardison, Malcolm Jamal Warner. A number of people have already begun to join our coalition, Russell Simmons, and work with us, and we are glad and happy to be working with Black Youth Vote. We see ourselves as the arm that will create awareness in the community through the audio and television public service announcements. We will also be doing advertisements on with mass transit advertisements. We are also planning to do issue forms with Vibe magazine and do advertisements in the Source magazine and Vibe magazine, publications that young people read and are close to, that are part of the hip hop community. And we're glad to include Black Youth Vote and have them include us, and then we will assist Black Youth Vote in registering voters. While Black Youth Vote will be the people actually on the line registering the voters, we can open up arenas through our entertainment channels like concert events. We'll be registering with Black Youth Vote, registering voters on the LL Cool J tour, which started today in Rochester, New York. And we'll be registering voters across the country on that tour. It's LL Cool J and R. Kelly on that tour with Black Youth Vote, and we're very happy about that. We'll be providing access not only to other concerts, but into nightclubs and other entertainment venues that we can provide with our resources. And in a time, as everyone stated, you know, when the majority of the crimes in America are committed by white people, but Black people are the majority of the people in the prisons, it's very important that young people understand the need to come together and to get involved, not only by registering and voting, but also by speaking out. And it is our hope that the Hip Hop Coalition and Black Youth Vote will be able to get young people to speak out and get involved in 96 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I bring up our next speaker, I just want to recognize someone that's very, very near and dear to the Black Youth Vote Coalition, and that is Barry Saunders. He was there with the formation. He is very much a part of Black Youth Vote. And additionally, this morning never could have happened in the form that it's in right now, were it not for the tremendous, tremendous support in the 11th hour from our dear colleague and friend, Kimberly Hughes. Thank you so much. Now, before I bring our last speaker, I did leave someone off of your program that should be there, and that's the powerful youth labor movement represented by DeSaja Lomax from Front Lash.
Good morning. I will make my statements brief and to the point, and it should be very clear that Labor and Frontlash, in addition to with this coalition, will be bringing to you in 3D young people across this country registering their peers to vote and coming out to the polls. So no matter what letter you put beside your name, whether it be an R for Republican, a D for Democrat, I for Independent, we are going to make you accountable, and we're going to mobilize to do that. Thank you very much.
Finally, our last speaker is Tim Jones, who's president of the Cultural Initiative, which is a hip-hop coalition that really represents the culture of hip-hop. Tim?
Good morning. I was really wondering what to say, and at first let me just say God is faithful. And also, I would like to thank Lisa Sullivan. And I say that because April 4th, with it being the memorial of the assassination of King, and she gave me an essay that he wrote about young people. And it just totally took me back. And just in praying about it, I realized that if in a man's death, he gives another man life, then that man never dies. So what is supposed to be a sad day, being April 4th, is really a time for celebration, whether it be in the spirit of Ron Brown, Martin Luther King, and the list can go on, as well as some young brothers that I seen that might have been killed last night. So we definitely can't forget them. Like I said, I'm president of the Cultural Initiative, and we sponsor the first exclusive hip-hop conference in the history of entertainment, founded at Howard University, which I'm a proud alumnus of. God is also faithful, because I've heard the term hip-hop used more in this press conference than probably 3 years prior without any snarls. So there's a level of acceptance, and whether that acceptance is due to a point of being destitute, where we're going to try anything to get the youth together, or whether there's a sincere interest. I'm standing here because I can say for the people behind me, it's definitely a sincere interest. And that is shown by, this is one of the few youth events that I've attended where there's youth in the audience. To many, it's out of control. To a few, it's an organized rebellion. To some, it's an opportunity. Black Youth of America or hip-hop music. It's interchangeable. So that's why the Cultural Initiative stands wholeheartedly behind Black Youth Vote. Because hip-hop is Black youth is hip-hop. So it's one and the same. And the education piece of Black Youth Vote, the commitment that I've witnessed on the ground level of Black Youth Vote, it's only a natural fit. And it's definitely a natural fit that we kick this off on April 4th, with this being Youth Day for our conference. The Children's Defense Fund will all be at Howard University. And this is definitely a very, very powerful day. And I'm not sure if everybody here can understand how powerful this day will be. And for Mrs. Barry, I was a part of the Howard protest in '89, in which Marion Barry, the mayor at the time, came through. So I know full well that he stands for youth all across the nation. But it's definitely an honor and privilege to be in Washington, D.C. We invite you all to the conference. Black Youth Vote will definitely be a very, very powerful movement, and I challenge you to take a very active role. And as we're telling you to be accountable, hold us accountable. Hold everyone that's standing in front of you speaking accountable, because this is not a game. God bless you, and once again, God is faithful.
Okay, now before we go into our question and answer session, I just would like for Kimry to introduce the young people that he brought with him.
First, I just want to give praise for today, and like Brother Tim, I want to invoke the spirits of Dr. King on this day, Ron Brown, and I want to add another name, Bill Morton, who was with Secretary Brown, who we met through the political arena, and I just want to invoke his name and his spirit to this day because it is in that spirit and in that legacy that we're gathered. And I'm proud to really be representative of a program that was created by a pioneer. I mean, I affectionately call him brother. I've looked at him as father. But in 1979, Mayor Barry created a program called Mayor Barry's Youth Leadership Institute. And I happened to be a participant in 1980 and proudly worked for now in 96. And I just want to recognize our young people who are learning the art of voting and politicking. We have the president of our student youth government, student school board, Reginald Johnson there. We have youth city council members. Raise your hand. The Youth Leadership Institute, Mayor Barry's Youth Leadership Institute representatives. They campaigned to win those offices. And I remember in 1980 when I ran and was youth mayor. I know Mrs. Barrett know it because she had 2 daughters who were awesome enough to become youth mayors. And so in D.C., we are learning the art of politicking. We are learning the art of organizing, of networking. And I'm glad to be here today on this day, but more importantly, I want to challenge and charge my young brothers and sisters again. The age to vote is 18, but you still have a tremendous empowerment force in your community. And it's not too inconceivable. If they can lower the age to charge young people for adult crimes at 14, they can lower the age to 16 at least for young people to vote. And it's not impossible. So on this day, let's be about the spirit of movement in the legacy of those that we have named and keep it pushing. Young brothers and sisters, I love you, and they speak for themselves. They some bad brothers and sisters, and they the greatest generation I've ever seen. I'm just humbled to be here. Thank you.
Now, and we were to have with us on the program Ivan Juzang, who's president of Motivational Educational Entertainment, who is working with Black Youth Vote to help us ensure that our messages communicate well and don't leave any gaps whatsoever, and of course that we bring the message across. With that, we will go into our question and answer segment. Anyone, if you have a question, please stand and state the question loudly. This.
Yes, I was curious as to why there weren't cities listed for activities. I write for the Detroit News, and Detroit being a city that is, say, 80 to 90% black, I expected to see the Detroit area, listed on this.
Well, we actually have a number of cities. Black Youth Vote is launching. Now, we also have activities going in and filtering in. We did a little synopsis, some highlights of what's going on. There's activities in Cincinnati and Oakland, just right up the road in Baltimore, all over the nation. We were not able to simply list them all. However, we do have young people active, and certainly young people active in Detroit. And as Black Youth Vote takes off, we will do the communication piece. We are on the internet. We are putting information there daily so that young people who are also on the internet are exchanging and networking with that information. We are communicating through newsletters and that sort of information so that the youth do stay connected with one another. But in this event, the focus was to highlight the day and Black Youth Vote itself coming out. And as the weeks roll on, you will certainly hear from us and our youth in Detroit.
I just wanted to add one other thing to that, and that is that the National Coalition through Operation Big Vote will be in over 80 cities working hand in hand with Black Youth Vote as one of the other initiatives that we're starting this year. So Detroit is definitely one of those cities. We met with some people in Detroit on Friday with Mrs. Berry. So you will see us in Detroit, and people are already working to mobilize that area. It's one of our target cities for 96.
And let me give you a youth spin on your question. A youth would say, how can I be down with Black Youth Vote, right? The point is, in your city, where you are, we do need to up those chapters in Detroit, etc. So we can put you in touch with people. Our number in Washington, D.C. is 202-659-4929. 202-659-4929.
And it was also pointed out to me that Detroit and a number of cities across the country have been targeted by all of the groups basically that are involved in this coalition that are doing voter registration and mobilization. And certainly the Citizenship Education Fund is moving through, I believe, the North, perhaps in advance of anyone else with regard to the youth. So I understand that they'll be kicking off a tour.
The Citizenship Education Fund, we're going to be focusing on two things. One is the African American Church. And through the church, we will seek to identify young people to train them and engage them in the political process. We want to have them to become the precinct captains. We want them to become the phone bank coordinators. We want them to get involved in the campaigns in a way that is not necessarily new, but it definitely will be something that we've not tried before, that this organization hasn't. And the other thing is that we will be doing focusing on high school graduations and having young people to sign pledges. There will be 2 pledges that we have. The first is that they will be against violence, against guns, but they will be for life, and they will be for the whole concept of each one teach one, and bringing another person along with them to the voting polls for 1996 and beyond. So those are the 2 things that we're going to be focusing on. And the cities around the countries, we will actually be working with the National Rainbow Coalition in bus tours. We will first start off in the state of Illinois on the 15th of April, and we will have a 10-city bus tour from the 15th through the 19th in Illinois. We will then move on. I think our next stop is either Ohio or Michigan, but definitely Michigan is one of the states that we will be focusing in on before the summer is out. And so young people in those states, in many states that, as had been stated, are not listed on your programs, but they are going to be touched. Believe me, they will be touched in one way or another.
And Black Youth Vote is just coming out the box, so we have a lot of work to do. We're looking for people to work with us and to plug people in, because it's all about networking. A lot of work to be done. Another question? We have answered every question on Black Youth Vote.
Let me, if there's a gap, let me, one of the things that's already happened, for example, is Alpha Phi Alpha, the fraternity, has signed on in the Black Youth Vote Coalition, which means in those chapters around the nation where Alpha Phi Alpha is already in existence, Black Youth Vote 2 is in existence. Operationalizing it is the next point of fact. For example, is Miss Evans here, Lotta Evans, with the Black MBA Association? And so in those cities where there are chapters of the Black MBA Association, where there are youth representatives, there too, Black Youth Vote has an arm. The same with labor and all of the organizations that sign on to the Black Youth Vote Coalition, including the hip-hop community, the Cultural Initiative here in Washington, D.C., and other hip-hop pockets around the nation, Underground Hip Hop Radio. Call us, get in touch with us, so we can ensure that we're on one page by the time this thing really kicks off in November.
And before we close, I should certainly mention the fact that we are seeking volunteers. Donna mentioned the LL Cool J concerts and other events that come up. That's the kind of energy that we're hoping young people will want to be involved with. And we encourage you, if you have an interest in learning to conduct voter registration drives or GOTV drives, or kind of doing 2 things, going to a concert and being of service to your community, then certainly be in touch with Black Youth Vote.
And one other announcement as far as what we're doing next. Today is Ballot Not the Bullet Day. We also next week, 2 weeks from now, will be in Atlanta during the Freedom Fest. We are helping to organize that with several other organizations that are part of the coalition, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and others in Atlanta, working with the students who are organizing the Freedom Fest Coalition. We will be there strong. organizing and mobilizing with the youth, and we have a training down there on the 13th that they've asked us to come down and do, the Black Youth Vote Coalition to come down and do on the 13th, to teach them how to use that infamous motor voter form, national form, that is has its own barriers, but we will use that form to register as many young people from across the country that are there for Freedom Fest 96 in Atlanta. Thank you.
And just before we close, I'm going to read off a partial list of our endorsements. That includes the A. Philip Randolph Institute, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Backstage Pass Productions, Benjamin E. Mays National Educational Resource Center, Black Student Leadership Network, Children's Defense Fund, Black Women's Roundtable, Ceasefire, Don't Smoke the Brothers, Center for Policy Alternatives, Citizenship Education Fund, Congressional Black Caucus, Council of 100, Congressman Ronald Dellums, the Cultural Initiative, the Democratic National Committee, Freedom Fest Coalition, Front Lash, Hip Hop Coalition Rock the Vote, International Black Student Alliance, MEE Productions, National Association of Social Workers, National Black MBA Association, National Black Student Government Association, Georgia Leadership Forum, Inc., National Alliance of Postal and Federal Employees, National Association of Student Affairs Professionals, National Black Child Development Institute, National Black College Alumni Hall of Fame Foundation, National Coalition on Black Voter Participation, Inc., Operation Big Vote, National Council of Negro Women, National Urban Coalition, Public Allies, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Youth Task Force. And this is just to name a few as of this printing. So as you can see, our coalition is growing. If you can think of a group that's not listed, put them in touch with us. If your group needs to be listed, get in touch with us. That closes it out. Dennis, thank you. We're on time. Got it done. Alicia Davis.
Where have I seen your name before?
You can see this event again at 6:50 a.m. Eastern Time on our companion network, C-SPAN 2.
Him the Bronze Star with Cluster, but they couldn't give him back the use of his right hand.
On Road to the White House, campaign ads from 1968 to 92, with a look back to Republican Senator Bob Dole's first run for the Senate.
Bob Dole knows Kansas. He'll represent your views in the U.S. Senate.
Also, President